Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Shaw Local's Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors along with Sean Hammond. And, uh, I'm sure a lot of you at this point have seen the post that we had last week about Hub Arkush. And if not, you've probably been wondering where we've been for the last month. But just to kind of quickly recap here for everyone, thank you, everyone who has reached out and asked about Hub. Hub suffered a medical emergency while leaving Hallis Hall about a month ago now during training camp. He's been hospitalized since then, been making progress, but it's been a slow go. The Arkush family has asked for some privacy during this time, which of course we are going to give them. So if you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them, but please do respect that. But Sean, with that, we're looking forward to talking football. Wish Hub was here with us. I know that the Bears are keeping a seat open for Hub this weekend at Soldier Field as the Bears get ready to take on the 49ers here in week 1. But let's dive in, man. The season is finally here.
Yeah, welcome back, Kyle. Just want to say sorry to all the guys that all our regular listeners. We haven't been able to be on in a while for obvious reasons, but we're jumping back into it. We're excited to be back, Kyle and I. And I was told the Hub seat will be open at Soldier Field on Sunday, so that's great. That's a nice little gesture.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to have football back. Last night was a lot of fun watching the Bills and Rams kind of got out of hand there in the second half, man. The Buffalo Bills offense is going to be a lot of fun, Sean.
Oh man, they looked really good, and Josh Allen picked up right where he left off in terms of that playoff game last year, and they came out firing and they looked really good, and kind of a dud for the Rams. They're going to have some issues there with Whitworth gone, and everyone points at Odell Beckham, but I think that offensive line is a bigger issue right now than the receiving core.
Yeah, the offensive line did have it struggled, particularly on the interior there. But all right, guys. So a few things to get out of the way first. Do want to say we have a new sponsor for the show throughout the season. Marengo Guns. Marengo Guns, always buying, always paying top dollar for your guns, ammo, and military items. Come see the experts at Marengo Guns. Open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. And guys, this season as we go into the 2022 season, Sean and I can happily say that we are increasing the amount of times that you'll be seeing our ugly mugs here on the Bears Insider Podcast. Our plan here, if the Bears are playing a Sunday game and everything works out, we will be previewing each week on Friday morning here at 9:30 a.m. and then back with you on Monday morning at the same time to break everything down that happened the day before. Shane Jackson, who has joined us with Bet Chicago Sports, will be along here today at 10 a.m. to break down any kind of betting angles for the Chicago Bears in week 1 and anything around the NFL. And if you notice down here in the bottom right side, if you're watching this live, you got a QR code there. If you scan that, we got a promo code for you for Caesar Sportsbook. Place your first cash wager, and if you lose, you'll get 100% of your stake back as a free bet up to $1,250. And win or lose, you'll also get 1,000 reward credits and 1,000 tier credits. Now, with that, Sean, where do you want to start? You want to dive into Bears 49ers? Guys, if you're already in the chat here, which of course we love questions that come in. I don't know how much we're going to talk about the stadium stuff from last night. I didn't think there was a lot of new news out of that. Sean, how about you?
Yeah, I didn't think we learned a whole lot that we didn't already know. But guys, if you do want to talk about it, put your questions in there. We can certainly touch on Arlington Heights.
Yeah. So if we get a bunch of questions, we will pivot over to that. But like I said, there wasn't a lot of new information out of that. We got some questions in here already, though. So I'm just going to dive in before Shane joins us here at 10 a.m.
Yeah, it's week 1. Let's talk 49ers Bears. Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So we got a regular here with Rick. So it's a good place to start with Rick. With the return of Lucas Patrick, who do you think the starting 5 will be? I would take a two-handed Jenkins over a one-handed Patrick.
Yeah, I'm going to lean with you, Rick. I would take the two-handed Jenkins as well. Lucas Patrick has that right hand taped up pretty good in practice, and there's some questions about whether he's going to be able to snap the football at all, and if they'd rather move him to right guard, which he played a lot in the past. I I kind of agree. I think this is going to wind up being. I would lean with Jenkins. It's hard to just throw a guy in there. The Bears finally have some mojo on that offensive line. They finally seem to get a starting five that they liked these last two preseason games and 2-3 weeks of practice that they've been working together. I kind of feel like that they're not going to want to mess with that at this point, and why not just wait a little bit longer until Lucas is feeling a little bit better and can snap the ball and play that center position. But it's the NFL. Nothing would surprise me. I think Jenkins probably has a higher ceiling at that right guard spot long term. But again, you're trying to win a football game on Sunday, and it's all about who's going to give you the better chance to do that.
Yeah. We've heard Sam Mustipher's taken such flack from fans. Some of it deservedly so. Some of it seems like a bit of an overreaction here. If he gets a start here in week one with Tevin Jenkins at right guard, Sean, how confident are you that this line is going to be able to hold up for an entire game?
Well, I mean, I would feel fine with Sam in there. I think he's proven that he can be a decent center, decent starting center. Now, if you're looking at the line as a whole, you're talking about. Sorry, am I getting muted here? Kyle, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I was hitting button trying to figure something out and hit the
wrong I disappeared from the screen and I kind of freaked out for a minute and thought I lost my feed. But you look at the line as a whole, you're talking about some really young tackles, and I would feel pretty confident with Sam Mustipher, and obviously Cody Whitehair is rock solid. But those young guys are the question marks, especially against a 49ers defense that is really good and a 49ers front that is really good.
Yeah, I mean this line's going to get tested right out of the gate. It looked pretty good in that final preseason game. It was nice to see them find some consistency, Sean. It just felt like throughout training camp, I worried that we were going to get to week one, and we are a little bit trying to figure out what this line's going to look like. But that's more because of we don't know how Lucas Patrick fits in with this, more than any kind of lack of confidence, in a starting five.
Yeah, and look, this is the way I look at it too. Sam Mustipher is a fine starting center, but in a perfect world, he's going to be your backup, and this is exactly why you kept him around. He can play guard, he can play center. If your starting center has a hand issue and can't snap the ball, this is why you have him. So I would think you're going to stick with the healthy guy who can snap the ball consistently and do enough to do his job. I think Sam is capable of that.
Sorry guys, if I go off screen like that, it's just because my allergies have been going absolutely insane for the last 24 hours. It's that time of year. Don't want you to watch me have to blow my nose all morning here as I try and get.
I thought you just wanted a close up of my face.
No, it's just it's that time of year. I don't know if anyone else is like that. It's just miserable. So try and jump off screen every once in a while. But yeah, so this 49ers team has really high expectations coming into the year. But we're going to talk about that with Shane. Week one is always wild in the NFL. Fans overreact, pundits overreact. We come up with these expectations for so long. Personally, I think this is a Bears team that's going to struggle to win more than 4 or 5 games. But week one can be weird. You got Justin Fields starting his second year. You got Trey Lance coming into his first year as a starting quarterback. Do you think the Bears deserve to be such a I think the last I had seen was a 7.5 point dog to the San Francisco 49ers in week one at home?
Well, yeah, we can certainly ask Shane, our betting expert, that one, but I think this is going to be a closer game than that. I do think the 49ers are probably going to win this football game. I got them winning by 4 points. There's a lot of unknowns with Trey Lance at quarterback, and what's that going to look like? We saw sort of an up and down in terms of the preseason games where he was able to put some film out there. We saw some good moments and some bad moments, and that's a huge question for this 49ers team. And the Bears might be getting lucky here in terms of where the schedule is, because I think Trey Lance is probably going to be feeling a lot more comfortable 3, 4, 5 games into the season than he is week one. And maybe there's some kinks to work out there with him and this 49ers offense early on.
Yeah, and already here we sit at Friday at 9:40 a.m. and I don't believe George Kittle has practiced at all this week, right?
No, yeah, so he's dealing with a groin issue, and that I believe I saw that somebody reported that that happened Monday in practice, so that is relatively new, and he has not been practicing. That's a big deal. He's obviously a huge part of that offense. He's a huge outlet for the whoever's quarterbacking the 49ers, and he has been for the last few years. That is certainly a situation to keep an eye on. It sounds like there's a good chance he might miss this game.
Yeah, love some George Kittle, but the guy's had trouble staying on the field the last couple of years. Certainly would be a help for the Bears if he's not. But I mean, even if he's off the field, you look at what the San Francisco 49ers do on offense. You're going to have a lot of involvement from Deebo Samuel. Eli Mitchell was a kind of a breakout star last year once he took over that starting running back job. And then you look at Brandon Ayuk, a guy that a wide receiver that I have really, really high expectations for coming into the season. I think this is going to be a dynamic offense, Sean. And Rick Gonzalez had asked us, saying there's a high chance of rain on Sunday. Does this help, or does this hurt or help the Bears with their emphasis on team speed and playing fast? Sean, I'll quickly start here. I think with both teams playing kind of a similar style of offense, I don't think there's really going to be an advantage for either side with the weather conditions.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They run similar style of offense, or at least what we expect the Luke Getsy offense to look like is going to be somewhat similar to what the 49ers do. They're going to keep the ball on the ground a lot, and I think that's probably the way to go in a rainy day. Especially with two young quarterbacks, you don't want the ball slipping out of hands and the issues that can arise in the passing game on a wet day. It's going to depend on how that grass is playing too. We know there's new grass at Soldier Field.
Yeah,
What is that?
That's been a big thing this week.
Yeah, that's been a
Bermuda
huge
grass.
story. The grass at Soldier Field. Everyone, we got to talk about something in August I know August is over now, but something before the season starts, and there's new grass. How is that going to react in the rain? Hopefully it's not an issue. You would think if they got brand new turf, it's not going to be an issue, but when things get wet, things get slick, weird things can happen out there at Soldier Field.
Oh, that's just the last thing that the Bears want is a week one game where they've replaced the grass. Or I guess the Chicago Park District is technically responsible for that, replacing the grass and have some rain and have it get torn up. So I'm certain Cairo Santos. For all the talk of changes of grass stuff, I wonder if Cairo Santos had been to Soldier Field this week. I know, what was it? Was it 20? Was it not? It wasn't last. Was it the 2020 season? Like they were flying over the field to like try and get some like video footage of Cairo
Yeah,
Santos kicking.
one of the news stations had a helicopter out there after some I forget the specifics of it. There's some field goal issues one week. They flew down the Soldier, or not flew down. They drove down the Soldier Field and were kicking at the stadium, and there was helicopters flying around trying to get some footage of that. I do wonder, Cairo's thoughts on the grass. And Matt Eberflus requested a different grass put in there. That was part of that story. I think it was first reported by WGN, if I have that right. And he wanted a different grass. It's similar to what the Colts had at their practice facility when Eberflus was there. So they're hopeful that is gonna solve some issues on the field there.
All right. Well, once they're on the field on Sunday, Sean, let's talk a little bit more about the Bears offense, and specifically Justin Fields. After seeing an extended look at him in week 3, you had a chance throughout the preseason or throughout training camp to see him every day. Where do you think Justin Fields is in development in comparison to where we last saw him in week 18 last season?
Well, look, if it's anything like that third preseason game, he's looking amazing, but I think with any preseason game, good or bad, you have to take that with a grain of salt. The Browns weren't playing some of their best defenders. You don't have Myles Garrett in there. That makes a huge difference when you're talking about some young tackles on the offense. And certainly he looked good in that game. I think when you look at camp as a whole, that was the best he looked. I thought, better than his best practice. I thought that Browns preseason game was his absolute best moment of the month of August. And he has been pretty safe. He's taking the safe options, and that's what you want with your quarterback. There were a lot of checkdowns during camp, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That means he's hitting the open target, and he's being cautious with his shots. I think.
You saw that. You saw that. I'm sorry to cut you, but you
Yeah,
saw
no,
that.
that's good.
You saw that last night with Josh Allen. And
Yeah,
I'm not comparing like or Justin Fields to Josh Allen, but what I'm trying to say is like, if you remember the knock on Josh Allen early in his career was that he would not check a ball down. Like even if it wasn't the deep shot 40 yards downfield, he was still going to that second receiver, maybe crossing the field 20, 25 yards downfield, 15 yards downfield, and making some really risky throws. You saw that last night where he was being a lot more responsible with the ball. He had plenty of big plays, but when they weren't there, he was getting the ball to the check down receiver, and they were getting themselves into manageable second and third down situations.
yeah. I think what did Zach Moss must have finished with? I don't know, 5, 8 catches in that game. Josh Allen was hitting his running back when he needed to, and that's while that's not exciting, as you saw last night, that clearly keeps the offense moving and can win games.
Yeah, and that's really what I think you're going to need out of the Bears, particularly early in the season against the 49ers. Um, David Montgomery is going to be featured heavily in this game. I think Khalil Herbert is probably also going to have a substantial role, Sean. How do you think that backfield breakdown is gonna look?
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be shared in some sense, but David Montgomery is still the guy. I still think David Montgomery is going to be the lead back, and he's going to be. He's shown in the past that he can be out there all 3 downs. He can catch passes when he needs to. I think that's a really underrated part of his game. We were talking to David Walker, the running backs coach, yesterday, and he is really excited to see what David Montgomery can do in this offense. And I asked him, his curiosity level to see this running game that we've talked so much about with these new blocking schemes, and obviously you got a bunch of new linemen in there. I asked him, his curiosity to see what this looks like when you get to play in a real game, and he took a little exception because I said real game. He said, "Hey, these preseason games are real, man." But he was like, you saw it in that 3rd preseason game. David Montgomery had a couple of nice runs, and his best one, I think, was called back for a penalty. You can see the potential there. And I think David Montgomery is going to be a huge part of this. If he can stay healthy, I think he's going to have a really good year ahead of him.
Yeah, I think David Montgomery is going to be in good shape all season long. Obviously, the bigger question mark is this wide receiver core coming into the season here. I mean, outside of Darnell Mooney, we've talked about it, I feel like, ad nauseum, but I don't really feel like anyone, because of the injuries that we saw in the preseason. Velus Jones continues to be limited in practice. Byron Pringle is back, but missed a good chunk of the preseason. I don't feel like we have a really good sense of what we're getting out of this Bears receiving core after Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, my big question this week is Byron Pringle, because he returned to practice. I think it was one of the last practices we got to watch in full, or maybe the first one that was closed. So we haven't really seen him. We haven't seen what that looks like when he gets back out there onto the field. We saw it early in August before any preseason games. We got to see him a little bit, but I want to see how they work him into this offense. Obviously, they brought him here for a reason, and he's going to be a big part of that. Darnell Mooney, I'm not worried about. His connection with Justin has just been awesome. I think those two have them and Justin with Cole Kmet. Those are going to be your top targets on this offense. Those guys look really good. It's all about who fills in after that. The Velus Jones injury is concerning. He was not participating the last couple of days. We'll have to see later today on Friday what his status is, but it wouldn't surprise me if he winds up missing this game. He was in and out during the preseason, and that has been a little bit disappointing, but you're not going to blame him for having a hamstring injury, of course, and you just want to see him consistently be in there. And then you look at some of these other guys. I mean, Dante Pettis had a really good preseason. Amir Smith-Marset is the new guy they claimed off waivers from the Vikings. I don't expect him to be super heavily involved in this game. I think that's going to take a couple of weeks before he's really a part of this offense.
Yeah, I don't think that we'll see him much this weekend. If we see Velus Jones as well, I think it'll be really limited. You're going to see a lot of, I think, 2 tight end sets from the Bears, particularly early in the season with the wide receivers that they try and break those in. Also, just to kind of make sure Justin Fields it feels safe out there. Based on what you saw in training camp, how do you think the Bears will utilize those tight ends, Sean?
Oh yeah, I mean they're going to be out there a lot. They kept Jake Tonjes as a blocking back. That's why he's here. That's his number one thing is he can block and he can be your backup fullback if Kari Blasingame, something happens to him. Those tight ends are going to be heavily involved. I mean, I expect Cole Kmet to be out there a lot. His snap count is probably going to be pretty high in this offense, and that's a good thing. You want to be able to utilize those tight ends and throw some things in there that might surprise some defenses. If you can't establish this running game, then that play action pass becomes so valuable. And having a good tight end who's rock solid there in the middle, that can make a huge difference for an offense like this. You see it with George Kittle and the 49ers and what they're able to do.
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. Rick Gonzalez asked us here, over under 25 TD passage for Fields this year.
Ooh, I'm going to say under. That's just my initial gut reaction. When's the last time we had a Bears quarterback throw 25 touchdowns? I'd have to probably Cutler at some point, right?
I'm pretty sure Cutler got to 25 touchdowns. Yeah, I would say probably Jay Cutler. I think 25 probably a little high for this offense. Justin Fields' second year, particularly because I don't expect them to be really pass heavy. I think they're going to use their ground game quite a bit. I think Justin Fields is probably going to run quite a bit as well. So, if you had 25 combined between passing and rushing touchdown for Justin Fields, I'd say over. I think he's probably in that 20 touchdown range, Sean.
I'm just looking this up. Mitch threw 24 in 2018. I got to go back and look at Jay Cutler. But yeah, I think it's all about the offense too. I mean, when I say I think he's going to be under, that's not a knock on Justin. That's just what I think this offense is going to do. I don't necessarily see them throwing the ball like crazy. I think they're going to establish the run and then pick their spots with Justin.
Mark Potash dropping into the chat here and asking us a question. Always enjoy having Mark join the show. Mark said, what could happen on offense Sunday you'd think would be an indicator of season-long success? Sean, I'll start with this one. I really want to see the Bears establish a good run game with that outside zone read scheme that we're going to see from Luke Getsy. We've seen it have so much success in Green Bay with utilizing Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon on the field, sometimes at the same time, but really using them in the short passing game. That's what I'm looking for. If we see an offense that really involves multiple backs, I think that bodes well for the Bears offense this season.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at long-term, a win that indicates long-term success, I'm looking at Braxton Jones. I want to see, Justin said this week, he's not going to win every rep against Nick Bosa, and nobody's expecting him to. But, if Braxton Jones is a solution at left tackle, that is a huge problem solved for Ryan Poles. And, I'm not even saying that one game is enough to know that for sure. But, if he comes out and he looks like a starting left tackle in the NFL, that's going to be a huge boost to the future of this offense. And that's going to solve an issue that they won't have to solve moving down the line. And if you can find a left tackle in the 5th round out of Southern Utah, I mean, that is a great story if that is the case. And the jury's still out on that. We're going to have to see Braxton in a couple of games, but that's one spot that I'm really watching. And obviously Justin, this is all about Justin Fields and the quarterback position. You want to see him finding success and hopefully, this isn't a good answer either. I'll call this answer B for me. The offense as a whole, this Justin Fields and Luke Getsy combination, if they're working well together, that's going to be, they're going to be hopefully working a couple of years here together before Luke Getsy winds up as a head coach somewhere. And if you have the right offensive coordinator for the right quarterback, you're going to be in really good shape here this year, next year, and hopefully for a couple of years.
And it's funny because I feel like I've been so negative all offseason. And like I said, I don't expect the Bears to win more than 4 or 5 games, but I actually find myself pretty positive heading into this season, Sean, because as you were talking about, I do expect to see those things that you were mentioning about the offense overall. I think Luke Getsy is going to have this thing going in the right direction. I don't think that's going to translate to wins a lot, but I think that's probably the best case scenario for the Bears when they're trying to rebuild. Like if you get a good looking offense under Luke Getsy, Justin Fields has progression. As you said, if Braxton Jones is able to take that left tackle position, and not just him, like you look at the offensive line, Tevin Jenkins a month ago, we thought was a sunk cost, a guy that could be traded and even potentially cut. I mean, if they weren't able to move him along, now he's got a chance to be your starting right guard. If Larry Borum is able to take a job or really settle in and build off of a good rookie year at right tackle, that's 3 young positions on your offensive line. You're young at quarterback. You're young at wide receiver. All of a sudden, your offense moving forward into year 2 of Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy, you add a few pieces, and all of a sudden you feel like you have an offense ready that can contend potentially.
Yeah, totally. And I like the addition of Alex Leatherwood too. I mean, he's absolutely a project, and they're not going to throw him in there right away. But you're talking about Jones and Borum, and you could throw Leatherwood into that too, into that mix. I mean, he's a guy that you're picked up for basically nothing, and he has that high potential, and maybe down the line he could wind up being one of your starting tackles as well, or maybe they move him to guard and he could be a starting guard for you there. I like. It was hard to see back in March when Ryan Poles was building this roster. It was hard to see through the weeds a little bit and see what this offensive line is going to look like. I feel pretty optimistic about that spot, just in terms of the young talent that they've added in the 6 months since then. It's not going to be perfect right away, but you look at the pieces they have there and you can see the potential, and they've given themselves multiple options at some of these spots.
All right. Before we bring Shane Jackson in here to talk Bears and betting, got a question from Alan about the stadium that I want to hit on, Sean. Alan says, as reporters, what do you think of Bears trying to balance politics, stadiums, and build a team at the same time?
I think the Bears came out and said that they're not going to ask for public funding for the stadium portion of this development, but they have indicated that they probably will for the rest of it. That means, the adjacent restaurants and whatever else they got going on the east side of that complex. And, I think that is, if I'm the Bears, I think that's the way to go. I mean, that's the way to sell it to the public. You're giving them a positive while also giving them a negative. You're saying, hey, we can build this stadium on our own. We don't really need your help. But if you guys want all this other cool stuff too, we could use a little help, and together we'll build this thing. I think that is, from a PR standpoint, I think they did a really good job of I think that was a smart move.
Yeah, the appetite for public funding for stadiums continues to decline really across the country. It's going to be more and more difficult to get that type of funding. I think the Bears are doing a pretty good job of walking that tightrope right now. They're not going to show their hand when it comes to what they're thinking about when it comes to public funds. I think they were trying to set that stage a little bit last night when it comes to the infrastructure that's going to come around that stadium. I think they hit on sewers a little bit, but anyone who's been out to Arlington Heights or that area knows that a lot of work's going to have to be done to the road network around there. On the north side of the stadium, you have Route 14 Northwest Highway that sits off of Route 53. You got Euclid on the south side of that there. All those are large roads that were able to handle the traffic from, Arlington Park. It's going to be a lot bigger thing, though, for a football game. And that is a lot of public land that's going to have to be redone and able to handle the traffic that's going to be heading out that way for Bears games and potentially a Super Bowl or an NCAA Final Four. Those are all things that Ted Phillips said that this project is, that's the reason that they're looking at this project, is because of those type of things. So, it's going to be a long process, even if they get this closed. I believe the last update, they haven't given an update about a closing date, but originally Ted Phillips had said January or February, Sean. It's probably going to be, and I'm just speculating here, I don't have any inside information. I would guess another year before we, have any chance to break ground. It seems like they have quite a bit of legwork still to do in terms of public funding and kind of the what's the feasibility studies that come along with building a stadium and everything that comes with that?
Yeah, and it's going to be a long process, and there's going to be some arguing, and obviously they're going to have to talk politics with some of these local governments and try to figure out how they're going to build the rest of that complex. And I just think it just feels like this is going to happen. I think they're at the point where they said it last night. They don't have a plan B. This is their sole focus. And if they can fund the stadium by itself, that tells me that they're moving ahead with this.
Yeah, and I do think that it's going to eventually happen. I expect there to be some setbacks, probably some public setbacks along the way where, it becomes a bit of more of a question mark. But I think that eventually they're going to get this deal done. And probably 5-6 years down the road, we're going to be, at least I will be about a nice 20-minute drive from Bears games, which would be nice because, man, that drive down to Soldier Field on Sunday mornings from the northwest suburbs it's a bear.
No pun intended.
God, that was bad. All right, well, let's go ahead and bring Shane Jackson in now. Shane, good morning, man. Good to have you on. Shane is our newest member of the team here for Bet Chicago Sports. Sean and Shane. That's gonna be difficult for someone like me that trips over words all the time. Shane, give us a little bit of a background of what we can expect from Bet Chicago Sports.
Well, I'll try not to mistake my own name and call myself Sean. No, you can expect a lot of betting content. It will be catered, obviously, to a local audience. We know that there's a lot of Bears fans reading this website, so a lot of Bears content related to betting at Bet Chicago Sports. But there'll be some NFC North stuff, some NFL stuff sprinkled in, and just anything that makes sense for the local area teams. I'll do as much as I can to help kind of new and experienced bettors.
This isn't really a betting angle, but I'm going to put you on the spot here if I can find the question, because we had a Mark Kazak, sorry, Mark, if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly. But Mark had asked us earlier, I have a question. Who's better receiver, Darnell Mooney or Brandon Ayuk? Shane, I'm going to let you start with that one.
That's a good question, right? Brandon Ayuk had the better draft capital coming in, so he was a better prospect coming in, but Mooney's produced more, right, at the NFL level, and you probably put more weight on that. It's a tough one. I think you're drafting Mooney a little bit before Ayuk in fantasy, so that's probably the tiebreaker, right? So people generally are smart about that kind of stuff. So it is pretty close, though.
Sean, how about you? What do you think?
I think that's also, you look at their production line. I think that's the offense factors into that. The type of offense they were running. Obviously, with Matt Nagy last year, they were throwing the ball all over the place. Darnell Mooney had a nice 1,000-yard season. I think it might be a little bit tougher for him to get. Well, I don't know. As I'm saying that, he's obviously clearly the best receiver on the team. So I don't know that that's going to be tough for him to get to that at all. But certainly the offense plays a role in that. And I think that's maybe why we haven't seen that type of season from Ayuk.
I think Darnell Mooney is a terrific receiver, and right now has had a better NFL career than Brandon Ayuk. And I think Darnell Mooney's ceiling is probably a high number 2 wide receiver. I think Brandon Ayuk has a chance to really break out this year and be an elite number 1 receiver. I could be wrong, but that's one of my more confident takes going into this season. I think Brandon Ayuk is going to have a huge year, Shane. But in the betting markets, as you look here, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and probably in for pretty good weeks against the Bears, but George Kittle hasn't practiced at all this week. From a sports betting perspective, have you noticed any changes from a betting perspective with the George Kittle news?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Bears have been basically a touchdown underdog all week and pretty much since this line opened in the summer. But you saw it trending, I guess, towards the Bears yesterday. I think that was in anticipation of the Kittle news. They saw he wasn't practicing. Then Aaron Wilson reported that he was unlikely to play. And so what they did, the odds makers did anyways, is they made the prices a little bit different. So the number is still 7, but the vig or the juice is minus 110 when you want to bet. But they made it Bears minus 115 at Caesar Sportsbook and the 49ers minus 105. And so they're basically saying, hey, we would rather you bet 49ers minus 7 because we don't want to move off this key number. But I would assume, or I would guess, that this thing closes at minus 6.5 for the 49ers come Sunday. But 7 is the current number, but it seems to be trending towards the Bears.
Kawhi jumping in here. I know you probably saw Kawhi yesterday. Said Shane did a good job on his new podcast yesterday. Kawhi, thank you for tuning in, and everyone who joined Shane yesterday. Shane, can you tell us a little bit more about what the schedule is looking like for the Bears, the Bet Chicago Sports podcast?
Yeah, definitely appreciate the compliment there. I wouldn't necessarily agree that I did a great job, but thank you very much. Yeah, the schedule is going to be 3 times a week. It is Monday, Thursday, Friday. The times are still in flux because it'll be very dependent on when guests are available. As for example, today Sean is coming on to talk about the Bears, and he's more available in the afternoon. So I think we're planning on 4 p.m. Central around that time to go live and talk some Bears and Week 1 betting stuff. So looking forward to that. But yeah, 3 shows per week. I'll probably hit my stride at some point in the season. Hopefully it comes before like week 8.
Sean, our friend from across the pond, Robert Phillips, says 10 plus sacks for Robert Quinn this year. What do you think?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean, I'm going to split the difference, I guess, between his 2 sack season a couple of years ago and what do you have, 18 and a half last year. I think he's probably looking right around that 9.5, 10 range if you're being conservative. Teams are going to be able to focus on him a little bit more without Khalil Mack in there. Obviously, Travis Gibson, a lot of potential. Al-Qadim Muhammad is an interesting addition, but those guys aren't Khalil Mack. So defenses are going to hone in on that a little bit more. I'm not expecting another 18 sack season, but I don't expect him to just fall back into that 2020 level when he only had 2 sacks.
I do think Robert Quinn's going to have more than 10 sacks this year. I just don't know if they're all going to be for the Bears.
Well, that's a fair question too.
Yeah, Robert Quinn, a definite trade candidate as we get towards the deadline, and I believe November is when the deadline is.
First week in November. Yep.
Yeah, first week in November. Shane, are you able to? Does Vegas have defensive season betting props?
They do not. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer actually, and you would think it's the opposite the way this world works, but sports betting started here, right, in Vegas, Nevada. But we actually have the worst options now that sports betting is becoming more legalized. So like everyone else who bets in other states, they get these awesome player props. They can do these parlays and cash out whenever they want. And us old school people out here in Vegas, we have to stick to our number and ride it out no matter what. So it's a little bit of a bummer. Like, I'm giving out props information on the Bears 49ers game, and I can't actually bet any of that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of a bummer, but I've enjoyed kind of the year I've spent out here.
What are some of the props? I know you'll talk with this a bit more in detail with Sean here, but what are some of the Bears props that have stood out for you in week 1?
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. So I immediately I was drawn to like what the quarterbacks are, right? Because not only is that generally the position we always talk about, but these two in particular are exciting because they're both in their second year, and they maybe are similar in a lot of ways, both drafted from the same draft class. They actually, odds makers based off Caesar Sportsbook's odds, project a little bit better day for Justin Fields, which I found kind of interesting. He has a higher completion prop and a higher attempt prop than Trey Lance. Trey Lance has a higher rushing prop at Caesar Sportsbook right now, but yeah, it's basically somewhat even. It's just skewed towards Justin Fields, in favor of Justin Fields. And that somewhat makes sense when you think about it. You can build a narrative around this game, seeing as, hey, 49ers lean on the ground game, and they jump out to the lead, and maybe the Bears have to throw a little bit more to catch up. But when writing that article for Bet Chicago Sports, I actually recommended taking the under on Justin Fields completions at 17.5. It was still available at plus money, and I tend to be more attracted to the plus money in terms of player props. And Justin Fields hit 18 or more completions only 4 times last year. So I would be skeptical that he does it against this front of the San Francisco 49ers defense. But we don't know. I mean, right? This offense is completely different. Maybe the Getsy offense has more of those quick checkdowns that we saw in the preseason, and he's able to get the ball out quickly, and that leads to more completions. We don't know that for certain, but I would lean towards the under on Justin Fields' completions.
You look at the lines across the NFL in week 1, and Sean and I were talking about the Bears being a 7-point underdog earlier, and I was stressing that the first week of the NFL is it's weird to begin with, and to me it's actually even stranger when it comes to the sports betting angle, because we've had 8 months or so to come up with these narratives in our heads about what a team is going to be, and bettors tend to overreact to that, and not just bettors, but Vegas. Like there are situations where these guys have to kind of make assumptions. Do you find week 1 to be good for betting, or is it a dangerous week for betting?
It's kind of tough because these lines open up so early, right? I mean, I think there was lines at Caesar Sportsbook in like May, and so you almost feel like you're getting the worst number possible when you're starting to bet into these lines in September. And you kind of can trick yourself into that. So it is kind of tough in that situation, depending on what you're looking at. But maybe if you are rooting for chaos, this is kind of the week to do so. Last year, underdogs went 12-4 against the spread. 9 outright upsets for underdogs. If you remember, the Steelers beat the Bills outright last year in week 1. So a lot of crazy and weird things happen in week 1 because, again, like you said, we spent all offseason talking about these teams. We form a narrative and we kind of establish that. And so I think there is ways to win in week 1, but I understand if people want to kind of wait for more information.
It looks like Robert got an answer here, but haven't 49ers got a key secondary player out? Then our guy CJ Williams here followed up with a Jimmy Ward, which I always like a good Jimmy Ward reference because I always enjoy a good NIU football reference. So, but let's see, Sean, do you know what the secondary situation is like for the Niners?
Jimmy Ward is on IR. They brought in Sean Gibson actually briefly during training camp, and I believe he's no longer there. I'd have to double check on that, but former Bear coming in there. Jimmy Ward's on IR. They've had a few practices here to sort of sort that out. It looks like they got George Odom and I'm going to mess this name up, Talane Hufanga at their safety spots right now.
Yeah, not a pairing that really strikes a lot of fear in you, but honestly, the secondary is not what you have to worry about with the 49ers. That front seven is looking really good, obviously, with Nick Bosa and Fred Warner leading the way there, Sean. Defensively for the Bears here in week 1, or defensively for the 49ers here in week 1, where do you think their biggest advantage against the Bears lies?
I mean, it's wherever they put Nick Bosa. You got 2 young tackles, and you can, whether you have him on one side the whole time or whether you're moving him back and forth, Nick Bosa is certainly a challenge for any young tackle. And you look at that secondary, they still have Charvarius Ward at cornerback, Emmanuel Mosley on the other side. Fred Warner is still right there in the middle at linebacker. There's a lot of intriguing pieces on this 49ers defense, and I think that's why this is a tough test for Justin Fields and Luke Getsy and this offense to come out here. Even if the 49ers offense has some question marks with Trey Lance, this defense is really good. And this will be a tough test for the Bears opening the season here.
Shane, I want to zoom out a little bit and talk the NFC North. The Bears not looking very good when it comes to potential of making the playoffs and contending in the NFC North. Outside of that, though, I really like what Minnesota has done in the offseason. Green Bay, while I think people are wondering a bit about the offense with Devontae Adams leaving, I like what they did on defense. You looked at last year, they really improved. They added some more to it this year during the offseason. Detroit, I don't expect to be very good, but there are some pieces there that I actually like on that roster. I do think the Lions are on the right track. From a sports betting angle, what stands out from these teams in the NFC North?
Yeah, the NFC North has actually been super fascinating all summer. It feels like there's a lot of groupthink going around with this division. It's one of the weirder things I've seen in quite some time, it feels like. But basically, everyone's on the Lions. They're so excited with the Lions. They've pushed this win total up to 7 wins, and they've pushed the Bears down win total. So basically, they're saying, hey, Lions are going to be good, Bears are going to be bad, right? And I just find that interesting when you compare just 2 quarterbacks alone, right? You'd be more excited about Justin Fields than you would be about Jared Goff. Not only that, the Lions have the worst ranked defense last year per Pro Football Focus. I just find it hard that unit will take a big leap without making much improvements in the offseason. So that has been one of the more curious things to me, is just the hype around the Lions when it hasn't felt as justified. I think there's potential there. I think they're building the right direction, but I'm not sure it all clicks this year. I still think they're a quarterback away and maybe a year away. So honestly, now that it's trickled up to 7, under 7 wins for the Lions is probably my favorite kind of bet in a long-term look for the NFC North.
It kind of reminds me of a baseball thing here. I'm a big baseball guy. We don't talk about it much, but the Detroit Tigers were hyped coming into the season. A young core, had some offseason additions, kind of fell apart on them there this year. I kind of feel like that's the same type of thing with the Lions, Sean. When you look at the NFC North, and actually I'm gonna throw this out here. If you're in the chat, give us a reply. Let us know, who do you think wins the NFC North? Sean, I'm going to ask you that same question. Who do you think at the end of the day, when we get to week 18 or get through week 18, who's taking home the NFC North title?
I've heard a lot of people, mentioning the Vikings more and more as the season gets closer. And certainly I think they're going to be in the running, the Vikings and the Packers. The Packers lost some key weapons on that offense, but I'm going to go with the best quarterback in the division. I'm not going to bet against Aaron Rodgers. I still think they win this division. I think they win it ugly. I don't think they're going to win 13 games like they have the last few years. But I don't think you need to win 13 games to win the NFC North. I would say the Packers win, maybe 11 games and come out as division champs.
So far, we got a lot of Viking reply, but we got Robert here. That's cruel. I can't answer that without saying the team name. I can't mutter. So I'm assuming that means he's going with Green Bay. Shane, which way do you lean?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I felt like I've been like this Kirk Cousins apologist for so many years, and I've rooted for the Vikings.
That's a tough life to live,
right? And they've always let me down a little bit. I bet Kevin O'Connell to be the coach of the year way earlier in the summer at better odds, and I got excited about this team. And now it's gotten this close to kickoff, and I feel like they're overrated. Like, people are talking about Kirk Cousins, maybe an MVP candidate. This team making a deep run in the playoffs, winning the NFC North. And I'm like, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers still are here. Like, I know we every year go, well, Pythagorean says they should have won 10 to 11 games and they won 13. But there's a reason why they keep exceeding expectations based off all the metrics. It's because Aaron Rodgers is really good, one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the league. As long as he's there, it's hard not to pick the Packers. And so I'd go with that. I think, he's going to find a way to replace Devontae Adams offensively. They got a good ground game to lean on, but defensively, this unit has a chance to be the best in football. And so that alone makes me think that the Packers should be in position to win the NFC North for, I think, the 4th year in a row.
Yeah, I'm going with the Packers myself. I really do like what Minnesota has put together on offense, obviously with Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. You got a really nice core there. I expect them to put up a lot of points again this year. I don't think they can stop anyone, guys. I don't know about you. They did not do enough to improve that defense for me to think that they're going to be able to stack 11 or 12 wins. I think this is probably a 9 or 10 win Vikings team. I think the Packers, even if they come back to the pack a little, are going to be able to win. But let's go ahead here and we wrap this up for the last 10 minutes or so, Sean. Overall, I guess, Shane, I'll start with you. Where is the Bears win total for this season currently?
I believe it's 6.5, heavily juiced to the under. They do not want to take any more under bets. It's a big juice on the under that's been kind of smashed. I think 7 was what it opened at earlier in the offseason. But yeah, it's been all basically Bears under money. It's the most popular win total bet going into the season at a lot of different sports books. Lions over is one of the most popular sports win total bets going into the season as well. So it's a lot on the under.
Sean, 6.5. You go. What are you taking?
I've had a million people we write about the Bears. We talk about the Bears. The first thing my friends ask me when we see each other after a while, hey, how many games the Bears going to win? I've been saying 6 games all off season long, since they largely built this team in March and after the draft. I still feel like that's probably right around where they're going to wind up. 6 wins. That certainly I could see them getting a 7th. I don't see them over 500. I think there's some winnable games on this schedule and you like that, but you also look at it from the perspective of the Texans and the Giants and the Commanders and some of those teams. And they're saying the same thing about the Bears, so I don't necessarily think the Bears are going to win every single one of those games. Yeah,
I think 6.5 is a really fair line right now. I don't think the Bears get past that. Mark said sorry, but I have the Bears winning 10 games.
He doesn't have to apologize.
Yeah, you don't got to apologize, Mark. I have a really, really tough time coming up with a way that the Bears can win 10 games. I mean, Justin Fields would have to be really good. The offensive line, all 3 of those youngsters that we mentioned earlier, and Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, and Larry Borum all would need to hit. I feel like everything needs to go right for the Bears to win 10 games, Sean. But I think 6.5 is a good line. I think the Bears will probably be in there. Like I said, I got 5 or 6. I do think there's enough young talent here that could potentially push to 7. Rick now popping in with 9, maybe 9. That seems a little rich, but it's, I guess, weirder things have happened. Teams come out of nowhere across the league, and Shane, I guess that's a good pivot point here. Can you give us a couple sleeper teams based on some betting odds that you think might exceed expectations?
Yeah, I'm all in on the Jags. The Jags win a weak AFC South. I think, we see this all the time, right? 17 of the last 19 years, a team comes from worst to first in their own division. The Baltimore Ravens are the obvious pick to continue that trend. But I think if you want to get a little spicy, I think the Jaguars make a lot of sense. The AFC South is super weak. I'm not sure what you saw from Matt Ryan is enough for the Colts to be the clear front runner in this division. The Titans will take a step back. It can't be worse than what the Urban Meyer era was in Jacksonville. We just saw Joe Burrow, a former number 1 overall pick, lead the Cincinnati team to an NFC North title. It wouldn't surprise me if Trevor Lawrence is able to take a big leap in year 2, because quarterbacks tend to take their biggest leap in year 2. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to lead this team to the playoffs and win that division.
I'm happy to hear you say that, because I've been high on Jacksonville, and I don't feel like there's been much talk about the Jags this offseason. Kind of flying under the radar. I do like the pieces that they have in place there. I don't know if they'll win the division, but I do think that they're going to take a quite a significant leap forward. Sean, as we head into week 1 here, though, we're about a little more than 48 hours away from kickoff. Let's wrap this up with some keys to the week 1 game. What are you thinking for Sunday?
Yeah, keys. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. You got to contain Nick Bosa on some level. You want to see Braxton Jones play well against him. For the Bears offense, you want to establish that run game. I think we've seen it a little bit. We saw it in that 3rd preseason game, but we want to see them playing with some consistency along that offensive line and get David Montgomery going, and then open up that play action passing game. Defensively, I mean, I'm really watching these rookie defensive backs, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker. I think they have a lot of potential, and I'm going to be keeping my eye close on those guys and seeing how they fit into this mix. I mean, I think Jaquan Brisker could be the type of guy who really makes a difference out there. He's a physical safety. He can come on a blitz if he needs to. He can do a lot of different things, and I don't know that it's going to be enough to beat the 49ers. I think the Bears will be in this game, and I have the 49ers winning 21-17.
Wow, that's actually I was just about to say that I'm going to take the Bears, or I'm going to take the 49ers to win the game 21-17. I expect it to be kind of a slower.
I don't expect a lot of points in this game.
Yeah, when you add in the weather, you got 2 quarterbacks that are still kind of feeling their way out in the league. Trey Lance getting his first opening day start. Justin Fields in a new offense coming off a shaky first year. I don't expect there to be a lot of points scored in this game, Sean. Or Shane. See, he's going to do that so many times.
It's weird. I wrote down earlier that if I was going to give a prediction, it was going to be 21-17. So very weird that we could have a sweep here, but I'll mix it up because there's bad vibes there. I'll say 23-17. How about that? 49ers win. But yeah, I've been a proponent that I think Bears +7 is the move. I've been proponent that I think the under is the move. I think it was 41.5 earlier in the week. I'm expecting kind of a sloppy game from both offenses. And maybe this is one of those weird games where all of a sudden at the end of the early slate, the Bears have a chance to win the game and knock off the 49ers, who are a lot of people's pick to make a deep run and be an NFC contender.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get out of here, guys, as we move towards an hour. Want to thank Shane for joining us. He'll be with us throughout the year. You can get all of our content at shawlocal.com for Bet Chicago Sports. Of course, you can get all of our Bears content from Sean Hammond. And Jake Barlson will be there on Sunday afternoon to have coverage from Soldier Field. Find all that at shawlocal.com. Follow us on Twitter as well, at Kyle Nabors, at Sean Hammond. Shane, I'm still learning your Twitter handle, so go ahead and give me that one for us.
It's at SJacksonBet, in case you forgot that I like to bet.
Yeah, we, like I said earlier in the podcast, we plan on doing this every Friday at 9:30 a.m. Back with you on Mondays at 9:30 as well as the schedules work out that way. We'll have to kind of massage things for Sunday night or Monday night games, stuff like that. But we will be with you twice a week. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Chicago Local Bears Insider Podcast, though, you can get a subscription on iTunes, on Spotify, and have notifications set. Also, set your notifications on YouTube. Give us a like if you enjoyed the video. That helps us out a lot. It helps people find the show. But with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Everyone enjoy week 1. It's going to be fun. It's nice to have football back, and we will talk with you on Monday.